Hi, my name is Nick Borson, and in this video I want to introduce an open source project I created, which I have called AdventureScript. AdventureScript is a scripting language and interpreter for creating text adventure games. I know, of course, text adventure games aren't really the hottest type of game these days. People tend to expect a bit more bling from their games, but I view it as kind of an opportunity for people to exercise their creativity by creating their own adventures. And so AdventureScript is kind of like I said, it's a language and a set of helper libraries and so on to allow you to do that. So to give you kind of an overview of the project, there's the AdventureScript language itself. So it has, like other languages, it has a grammar. It has some built-in functions and variables and things. There's an AdventureScript library that includes the parser and game engine that kind of reads the language and executes it. Then on top of that, the project also includes a couple of games, and includes this foundation library, which is written in AdventureScript. So you can kind of think of the foundation library as the foundation library is to AdventureScript kind of like the .NET framework is to C#. So C# is the language, but then there's a bunch of libraries that give you functionality that you can use. Well, the AdventureScript foundation language, or excuse me, the foundation library gives you a bunch of fundamental things like rooms and doors and items that you can pick up and keys and locks and things like that, monsters that you can use to build your games. These things are not built directly into the language; they're all implemented in the foundation library. Then on top of that, we have a couple of apps. So there's a console app, a terminal-based app called Text Adventure that you can use to run games that are written in AdventureScript. And then there's a graphical app built on the WinUI 3 framework called Oxbow Castle. And that is a little bit more capable version of the text adventure app. It's called Oxbow Castle, but it actually includes all of the games in the project. Oxbow Castle is kind of the featured game. And that app is, again, part of this project. You can also install it from the Windows Store. And there's a bunch of other stuff in the project, like documentation, tests. There's a PowerShell module to kind of with helpers for doing things. So I'm going to walk you through all of that stuff. Okay, here I am on github.com. I'm on the homepage for the AdventureScript project. And as with most projects on GitHub, there are a number of files you expect to see. There's a README file that gives you kind of just an introduction to what the project is. And this one tells you a little bit about how it's organized, gives you a link to a file that describes how to contribute to it, tells you how to build the project, play games, and so on. I'm going to walk you through that, so I'm not going to bother reading all that right now. There's also a licensed text file, which tells you that it has the MIT license, very permissive license. All this stuff I actually talked about a little bit in a previous video I did on Git. I did a Git 101 video and a Git Part 2 video. And in the Part 2 video, I demonstrated how to clone this project, and then submit changes to a project. I was really talking about just Git in that video, not really about AdventureScript per se. But because of that, I'm not going to repeat what I said there, except to say that we can clone the project by clicking the code button in GitHub, and then clicking the little copy icon next to the URL. We can go down to my trusty terminal window and say git clone and paste the URL. And now it's cloning that into a subdirectory. So now under my repos directory, there's a directory called AdventureScript, and we see that that has all of my files. So again, if you don't really know much about Git and GitHub, then I suggest going back and watching my Git Part 2 video. I will include a link to that in the description. All right, in the root directory of the AdventureScript repo, there is a file called adventurescript.sln. That is a Visual Studio solution file. So here I've opened that file in Visual Studio, and you can see that the solution, it has a handful of these markdown files that are the solution items. And then there are 4 projects. There's an AdventureScript project, Adventure Test project. So the AdventureScript project is the thing that implements the parser for the language. It implements the game engine and everything. Adventure Test implements some unit tests. Oxbow Castle is a graphical application that you can use to run the game. And Text Adventure is a console-based application that you run in the terminal to do the same thing. but the Oxbow Castle gives you a little bit more of a user-friendly and richer experience. It allows you to have images and things like that. So before you can run any of this, you have to build the project. So you can go to the build menu and choose build solution, or you can press Control-Shift-B. I've already done that to save time. And then if we want to run Oxbow Castle, we first have to select it as the startup project. I've already done that, that's why it's in bold, but you just right-click on the project name, choose Set as Startup Project, and then when we run, then that's the project that will run. So then I can click on the Start Without Debugging icon on the toolbar, or press Control F5, and now it launches that project, or launches that application. And here we see the Oxbow Castle app. Now it's not really specifically about Oxbow Castle, it's just one of the games, but I wanted to give it a game-like name rather than something, like AdventureScript or something. So the app is called Oxbow Castle after the sort of featured game in it, but it can run any of the games in this project. And you can also browse to select a different game from disk. So let me walk you through just kind of playing through part of a game. I'm not going to give any spoilers or show you anything important here, but so let's launch the Oxbow Castle game. And we see that we start out, we have an introductory description of what we see when we start the game, and then I can click in this text box to enter commands. I can type help to see a list of possible commands, but I'm just going to go north by typing N, and we see that we're in a courtyard. We keep going north, keep going. Let's go east here. If I go east here, we're in a churchyard. Go east again, and we're inside of the church. We keep going east, we're at the other end of the church. If we go south, we're in like a little house. And here there's a bed, there's a trunk. We can open the trunk, and we see that there are items. We can, take the brass key, and now it's in our inventory. So if we type I for inventory, we see that that's what we have. Look again to see what there is here. If I try going west, it says the door is locked. Well, maybe that key will work on the lock. I can use the key on the west door, and now it's unlocked, so I can go west again. Now we're in the south end of the churchyard. We go north and go west, and we're back in the outer courtyard. We go north. Here we're at the entrance to the keep. We go north again. We're inside the keep in its courtyard, inner courtyard. Whoops, I went south again. Let's go north again. Let's go west, southwest corner of the courtyard, north. There's another door. We go in there. Oh, now we're in the dark. So we have this concept of light and darkness and so on. So we might have to find a lamp or something to find our way around. Okay, so that kind of is an introduction to the Oxbow Castle game. I'm not going to show you too much of it. And if I exit that, we see that now there's the saved game, so we can resume that if we want to. But now let's take a look at the demo game. So the demo game is really meant as a sample to show you how to write your own game. And so the introductory text here for the game also includes links to both the source code for the game, which I'll click on here. Okay, so this is the complete source code for the demo game. Okay, it's not too long. And also, there's a link to another page that kind of gives sort of a walkthrough. It describes a little bit more in depth what some of the concepts are that the game uses and so on. Okay, so let's go back to the demo game, and I'm just going to play through this one. It's really short. If I say look, I can see where I am. I can go east, and now we're in a living room. I can go north. Now we're in a dining room. There's a table here. There are a couple things on it, but they don't really matter. I'm going to go west. There's a drawer. I can open the drawer and take a knife, which I can use as a weapon. It's now set to my current weapon. I go west. In this room, there's a goblin. So I'm going to attack the goblin. The goblin also attacks me. I attack it again. I just hit the up arrow to repeat the last command, and I've successfully killed the goblin. I can go west again into the garage, and here there's a key. I'll take the key and go back east and back south, and now I'm, back south, and now I'm back at the entrance. And the goal of this little game is just to leave the house. So if I go south, I hit a link or something. If I go south, it says the door is locked, but I can use the key on the door. and now it's unlocked, and if I go south, it says, congratulations, you won. Okay, so that's the demo game. Let's take a closer look now at the source code for the demo game. So here I've opened Visual Studio Code. I've launched Visual Studio Code and opened the AdventureScript directory. So we see on the left-hand pane we have the directory structure of the AdventureScript repo. So we have there's a games directory, and under the games directory there is a demo subdirectory, there's an ink subdirectory, and there's an Oxbow Castle subdirectory. So the demo subdirectory is where the demo game lives, and in that directory there is a file called adventure.txt. So every game, so the games, everything under the games directory are subdirectories for each game. The name of the subdirectory corresponds to the name of the game, and then in each directory, each of those directories, there has to be an adventure.txt file that is the source code for the game. Now, like I said, there's also an ink directory. That ink directory is where the ink for include, that is where the foundation, the AdventureScript foundation library lives. So the first thing that the demo game's adventure.txt file does is it includes these foundation files. And so let's take a look at foundation debug. So this one, this is just a, and by the way, these are written in Markdown format. So it's allowed for AdventureScript files to be either TXT files or Markdown files. If they're Markdown files, then essentially anything outside of the code blocks is ignored by the AdventureScript parser that allows the foundation library files to be kind of self-documenting, because they have text surrounding the code to say what everything is. Anyway, the debug library just has some debug commands that are, so you wouldn't probably include this in your finished program, but they're useful for while you're writing your program to be able to type things and say, okay, what are all the items, what are all the properties and types and variables and functions that are in this game. I'll show you that a bit more in a minute. But let's go through and kind of take a look at the overall structure of an AdventureScript file. So in AdventureScript, there's this concept of item. Item is kind of like the basic, sort of like a general purpose object. So an item could be a room, or it could be something you can pick up. It could be a weapon, it could be a monster, and even the player is an item, and it's an item defined by the foundation library. And items then have properties. So you can define, there are certain properties that are defined by the foundation library, and you can also define your own properties. So here I've just defined, at the top level scope is where you can define your items. And so I've defined in the demo game, we've defined an item for each of the rooms. Also at top level scope is where you can define functions. So, so here we have a function called onExitHouse. And what this does is we later on we set this so that when you reach the front porch, this function will be called automatically. And what we do is we display a congratulatory message and then end the game. And the true means that we've ended the game with that we won the game, rather than end game false would be we lost the game. So how does this get invoked? It gets invoked by on the front porch item. So inside of a game block, this is code inside of a game block, executes once when the game is first launched. So and then there's also turn blocks that are executed before every turn. So the game block is where we initialize all the properties of our items. So for example, we've created items for these rooms, but we haven't actually said anything about them. We haven't linked them together. We haven't given them descriptions and things like that. So that all has to happen inside the game block. So inside the game block, we set the front porch's items enter action. And this is, again, this is a property defined by the foundation library. So we set the enter action so that as soon as the player navigates into this room, it will invoke this function, which is again defined here on line 25. And the enter action property, well, in fact, we could even see that. We can say, let's go back to our game, and we can say list. Oh, we've ended the game. All right, let's go back into, let's start over the demo game. And now we can use our debug helpers. We can say list properties and enter action. The interaction property, let's scroll so it's at the top of the screen here, is a navigation action. So we can say list types, and we see that a navigation action is a delegate. So a delegate is essentially a reference to a function, and it's a delegate that takes two parameters of type item. So it takes the from parameter and the to parameter. So it's the room we're moving from and the room we're moving to, and it returns a Boolean value. And if we want to see more about the navigation action, you can actually go to the Markdown file in the Foundation library where that is defined, and it will describe you what that means. But anyway, so our function that we define has to match those parameters. So it has to take two parameters of type item and has to return a bool. And what we do is when our function is called, then we just display congratulations and we end the game. Okay, so that's the interaction. We also set the initial location of the player. Like I said, there's an item called player that's defined by the Foundation library. So we have to set the player's initial location. We set it to the entryway. And then for each room, we give it a description. That's why we, and then generally those begin with you are somewhere. We can use some sort of markdown style formatting. That's why front porch is in bold, because we use the double asterisk to indicate bold, and entryway is in bold. So in the descriptions. Rooms can also have, again, if we go back here to the game, if we look, okay, you are in the entryway, and there's a visual representation of the entryway here. That is created by setting the draw action to a function called draw square room. So this is a function provided by the Foundation library that it just draws a room that's square in shape, and it draws walls where there are walls, it draws doors where there are doors, and so on. The other way you can provide a visual representation is you can reference an image file. So a couple of these rooms have PNG files associated with them. Again, we're still inside the game block. So part of the goal of the game is we have to find the key in order to get out of the room. So I've defined a key by using a function in the Foundation library called new key, and we've passed. So when we got into the garage, it said there is a brass house key here. Well, the reason it said that is because brass and house are adjectives, and those are separated by spaces. And there's another string parameter, which is the noun for the key. So we can refer to the key just by its noun. The way the Foundation library, you can refer to things just by the noun, but if there's more than one thing that's accessible in the current environment with the same noun, you can use adjectives to disambiguate that. And then we specify the initial location as the garage. So there's the key, and the return value of this function, of this new key function, is an item for that key. And we store a reference to that item in a variable called $key. So kind of like in PowerShell, variables in AdventureScript have the names of variables begin with $signs. Then this is to link rooms together. We can create doors and openings and things. So if we say we're creating a locked door, and the from room is the front porch, the to room is the entryway, and the direction from the front porch to the entryway is north. So we're saying the entryway is to the north of the front porch. And it's a locked door, so we have to specify the key to that door. And so we've specified the key item that was returned by the new key function on line 78. Okay, so then we link to the other rooms there's other functions in the Foundation library that can be used to do this. So we have openings, we have closed doors, or a closed door. There's also this concept of monster. This is all defined in the, if I scroll to the very top, the Foundation combat module has monsters and weapons and armor and things. So we created the goblin. We give it, again, adjective and a noun. We give it a health score. Damage resistance is sort of, affects how much damage it takes when you use weapons against it. Attack damage is how much damage it does to you. And then we specify its initial location. There's the concept of containers. So here we have a kitchen drawer that you have to open in order to see what's in it. There's a concept of weapons in the combat module. So we created a weapon and it's in the kitchen drawer. So the return value of the new container was an item on line which we assign to a variable on line 120. We can specify that drawer as the initial location of the carving knife that we create. So there's containers, which can be things like drawers and chests and cabinets and things like that. There are also tables, which could be either tables or shelves or desks or whatever, things that are surfaces that things can be on. So things are in a container, but they're on a table. So the table has a couple of things on it. There's a plate and there's a knife and there's a fork. I didn't really go into that in the game, but similar idea to a container. And finally, at the beginning of the game, we invoke, there's a message function. So at the after we've linked all these rooms together, we then display these messages to sort of introduce you to the game. And the message function is just our way of outputting things to the user. So that is pretty much the, oh, and finally, we also defined a map command, which I didn't show you, but let's go ahead and try that. So I say map, and that just displays this image of the house's floor plan. So we do that just by saying message, and we use this kind of markdown syntax to reference a PNG file. So bang, and then the alt text inside of square brackets, and the URL of the image inside of parentheses. Okay, so that is our walkthrough of the adventure game. You can see now how you write, how a game is written in AdventureScript. So with that in mind, maybe we should try creating our own simple game to show you how that is done. All right, so if we're going to add our own game, that means we're going to be making a change to the repo. So we have to kind of follow the normal Git workflow that one does when making a change to an open source project or to any Git project. And that starts with creating a topic branch. Now, if you don't know what that means, then I would refer you again back to my earlier Git 101 video and my Git Part 2 video, especially the Git Part 2 video. That's where I talk about this kind of workflow where you create a topic branch and then commit changes to your topic branch and then create a pull request. I also describe that in the contributing.md file in the root of the AdventureScript repo. It talks about how to do that process. So let's just do it here without too much talking. So I'm going to say git checkout -b. That means I'm checking out a new branch, and I'm going to give it a name, user Nicholas Borson, my game. So I'm trying to give it a branch. I'm trying to create a branch with a name that is not going to collide with anybody else's branches. So I'm including my name, my Git logon name in my branch name. And then I'm including the word my game just because that's what this particular topic branch is for. Topic branch is being a branch that's for some particular purpose. Okay, so I've created a branch. Now I can start making changes, and I don't have to worry about my changes. My changes aren't going to go directly into the main branch. They're only going to be in my topic branch. And then ultimately I will merge those changes into main if I decide to keep them, which I don't think I will because this is just for demo purposes. Okay, so to create a game, if we look at the games directory, we see that there's a demo game, there's an demo subdirectory, there's an Oxbow Castle subdirectory. So those are the two games we have now. To create and then there's an Inc directory that contains the foundation library. If I want to add another game, I have to create a directory for it. So I'm going to make a directory, md games. Let's put it in quotes because it's going to have a space in it. Games, my game. Okay. So now if we look at games, we see that there's a my game subdirectory. And then if I go into Visual Studio Code, I can create a file. It's not really a game yet until it has an adventure.txt file. So I'm just creating a new file. I hit Control S to save it. I'm going to browse to my directory. And I'm going to call the file adventure.txt. Okay, so now we have a game. It doesn't do anything yet. But to just create kind of the very simplest game we can, I'll just create a game block. So remember, a game block is a block of code that executes once at the start of the game. So this is where we initialize our game. And it can also be where we display any messages to the user that they see when they first run the game. So I'm just going to display a message that says, hello world, welcome to my game. Okay, and that's all my game's going to do for the moment. So let's try running it. So how do we run this? Well, one way to do it the easiest way to do it actually is to use this library that's part of a PowerShell module that's part of the AdventureScript repo. If I, again, look at the root directory here. There's a module called Adventure Helpers. So I'd say import module, Adventure Helpers. Okay, tells me that the module is loaded. I can say get adventure help to get a list of exported functions. And one of those functions is called get game. So that's just going to list all the games that are currently in the project. And now we see that my game is one of them. All it's really doing is it's listing the subdirectories under the games directory that have an adventure.txt file in them. Then I can say invoke game. And again, I'm going to say my game, the name of the game. And this is going to use the text adventure, the terminal-based text adventure application to run my game. And here we see the command line that it's executing. So it's running textadventure.exe, and it's passing it the path of the adventure.txt file for my game. And we see that the message that we specified, hello world, welcome to my game. Now this game doesn't have any commands yet, so all I can really do is quit, which I do by entering Q, and that was it for my game. All right, well, let's say we want the game to do something a little more interesting. You want to be able to have maybe some rooms or places you can move around. So a lot of the functionality to do that is implemented as part of the foundation library. So let's go ahead and copy. I'm just going to copy these include files, references to the include files from the demo game here, and I'll include them at the beginning. So now we're pulling in all of the functions and properties and so on that are defined by the foundation library. And I've also included the foundation debug library because that just is useful when we're debugging our game. So now that we've got that, we can actually add some items for rooms. Let's just, let's say we have, we start out in a forest clearing. We'll just call it clearing. Now this is just the name of the item. It's kind of like a variable name or something. It doesn't show up to the user. It's just how we refer to it within the program, within the script. And then I'll have another item, which is maybe a stream. And we're going to have a path that goes from the clearing to the stream. Let's say that the stream is to the north of the clearing. So I'll put the clearing at the bottom and I'll put the stream at the top just because that helps me remember. Okay, so first of all, let's give these things description. Well, let's say that this initial location is the clearing. So I'll say player.location equals clearing. And then I'll give each of these places a description. So I'll say clearing.description equals you are in a forest clearing. And stream.description, you are by the bank of a stream. Okay, so now so far if I run the game, I'll be by the clearing, but I won't be able to go anywhere because I haven't defined any. Oops, what did I just do? All right, let's run the game again. Welcome to my game. I could say look now, and it says I'm in a forest clearing, but there's no doors or paths. There's no way I can go anywhere from here. If I say north, for example, you can't go north. So let's quit out of the game. So how do we actually enable some navigation to happen here? Well, let's go ahead and I'm going to navigate to the repo again, and I'm going to go to the from the README. I can go to the docs here. And there's a reference here to the core library, foundation library, and here we have all of the. This is the actual library implementation, because again it's in Markdown. The code is it's in code blocks in the Markdown, but there's also a bunch of text that describes what stuff is. So let's look for doors. I'm just going to do a Control F to look for doors. Okay, so there's a door state property. Let's move on here. There's a key property. Let's go to the open. There's a new door function. I don't know that. So here we are. Okay, so here are door functions. So you can initialize a door, you can link rooms one way, you can link rooms both ways. There's new opening. I think that's what we're going to want because we're going to create a path. So let's go down to new opening. So we give the from, the to, and the direction. And I'll say link these rooms together. Create a path from the clearing to the stream. I'll say new opening, and it's going to be from the clearing to the stream, and the direction is north. Okay, now if I run the program, and I say, look, you are in a forest clearing, there is an opening to the north, and I can say north, and you are now by the bank of a stream, and there's an opening to the south, and I can go south back to the clearing. Maybe I don't want it to be described as an opening, so instead of saying, what I can do here is I can assign the result of a new opening to a variable. I have to use the var keyword to declare the variable when I first use it. And I can say path.noun equals path. So instead of opening, it's going to be a path. Okay, now if I run this again, say, look, you are in a forest clearing. There is a path to the north. And now if I go north, I'm by the bank of a stream, and there's a path to the south. All right, so we've created our very basic game. Let's say we now want to add it to the set of games that are that you can play from the Oxbow Castle, the GUI, the graphical environment. So we can do that by using another commandlet, or another command that's built into that PowerShell module. It's called build all games. And what this is essentially doing is it's compiling all of the games. That means it's basically loading them into with the parser, and then saving the initial game state as assets that are part of the Oxbow Castle directory. And if we look now at if we go back to Visual Studio and we look at the git changes, we see that in the games directory we have our adventure.txt file, but there's also an adventure.txt file in a directory under Oxbow Castle. And it's a bit different than the one that we have in our source directory because there's a whole ton of stuff here. That's because it's actually compiled in all of the stuff from the Foundation library. So okay, anyway, so to actually have this work now, I think we may have to actually rebuild Oxbow Castle the first time this happens. So you can do that by choosing build, rebuild Oxbow Castle. I already did that, so let's just go ahead and run this. And now we see my game show up as one of the options when we say play new game. And here we are. Hello world, welcome to my game. I could say look, and we can go north, we can go south, and that's pretty much all we can do in this game so far. But it gives you an example of how to add a game. Now, one final thing is that we can add a test for our game, and there's a description of how to do that in the contributing.md file. But let's go ahead and look at the help for our PowerShell module. It's called build game trace is what we do to add this test. So let's get help. Build game trace. Okay. We just say build game trace and we specify the name of the game. So we say build game trace and it's my game. And all we do is we basically play through our game. So we'll say look, and we'll say north, we'll say south, and we'll quit. All right, and what this has done now is it's added some more files to the project. So now under the test files directory, under adventure test, there is a mygameinput.txt file. This includes the commands I just typed when I played through the game. And there's a mygametrace.txt file. And this shows both the commands and the output of the game as I played it. So this is a way of ensuring that if something breaks, if somebody makes a change, let's say somebody makes a change to the Foundation library that changes the behavior of your game, that's not going to go unnoticed. It'll be caught by the test. Now I could say invoke tests, and it runs various tests. That includes the game test.mygame. So that is actually playing the game by playing back all those commands we saved and verifying that the output matches the baseline output. Okay, there's more information about all that in the contributing.md file, but there we've kind of walked through the process of creating a new game. All right, so to wrap up, AdventureScript is a new GitHub project that I created that is all about creating text adventure games. And I'm hoping that people might find it a fun, creative outlet to be able to write their own adventures. And of course, you can also contribute to the project in other ways. If you want to make changes to the language and so on, that's also welcome. There's a README file in the project that just gives you general information, including how to build and run the games. There's a contributing MD file that gives you guidelines for how to contribute, sort of what I just walked through, and then with a little bit more detail. And of course, there's a demo game in the project that you can use as a code sample if you want to create your own games. So I hope that you find that interesting, and maybe somebody will be inspired to try it out. Thanks for watching. Bye.